going great. Now it's time to introduce our keynote speaker. It's retired Army General Rick Lynch. You know, I've heard him speak numerous times. He spoke to our coaches. He spoke to some of our groups. He helped us put our strategic plan together. He was hired about a year ago, April 1st, 2012, and he took over the Automation, Robotics, and Research Institute that he since renamed UTA, which stands for UT Arlington Research Institute. He's doing great things out there. During his time in the military, he was responsible for 163 Army installations around the world. He had 120,000 people under his command, and he had an annual budget of $13 billion. He's a graduate of West Point, and he got his master's at MIT. You can read his bio in our program. But I'm lucky to say that I can call him a friend, and he's my golf buddy, and it's my pleasure to introduce Rick Lynch.
There, I did it. I apologize. I am allergic to podium, so I can't afford to stand behind a podium. It'll cause me to sneeze all night long. Thanks for this opportunity. Thanks to both the Jims. First, Jim Spaniolo. I did retire about 15 months ago. Like most retired generals, when I retired, I started my own company. I make speeches around the world about leadership and leader development. I wrote a book that'll come out this fall about leadership, and I do some consulting. And then I was given the opportunity to come up to this magnificent university, and I met Jim Spaniolo. And he chartered me to take over the Research Institute and gave us a goal of generating for this magnificent university $100 million a year. And we're well on the path to make that happen. So for Jim Spaniolo, sir, thank you for allowing my wife and I to join the Maverick family. For Jim Baker, thanks for being my buddy. You know, when I got here about a year ago, we had a chance to sit down and talk. I've grown very close to you over that last year. I'm amazed with the progress you've made with the athletic department as the athletic director. You're amazing. I do question his judgment, however. As he said, we're golfing buddies, and we played golf last Thursday with President Spaniolo and John Hall, the Vice President for Operations. How many of you know anything about golf? Raise your hand if you know anything about golf. Well, I'm a lousy golfer. Jim can attest to that, and that Jim is his as well. But you got a choice. When you go out there to that first tee, there's different colored tees. There's a red tee and a white tee and a blue tee and a gold tee and a black tee all the way back in the back. And there's a reason that they put those red tees up close for golfers like me. But Jim said, no, we're going to play off the gold tees, and we did, because he's got a magnificent drive, and I was lucky for my drive to make it to the red tees. But we'll work through that over time. When I introduce myself, I don't spend any time talking about being a general. Does anybody out there have any idea what a general is, by the way? Any historians or students of the military that know what a general is? I remember I was about halfway through a presentation not long ago, and somebody in the back of the room raised their hand and says, well, what is a general, right? Well, the Army's got 1 million people on or about, and less than 50 of them are able to serve at the rank of 3-star general or 4-star general, and I was blessed to be one of those select few, and for that I thank God. So some folks like to introduce me as the general and talk about the things that I did while on active duty, and I did have the privilege of commanding at all levels. I commanded a division in combat, about 25,000 soldiers. I commanded 3 corps in Fort Hood, about 68,000 soldiers, and I did command all the installations with 120,000 people under my command. Some people think that's impressive. I don't think that's impressive. Candidly, when I introduce myself as Sarah's husband and the father of Susan Lucas. My beautiful wife Sarah is in the audience here tonight. She is a UTA alumnus. She and I have been married for over 30 years, and of those 30 years, we were apart 12 of those years, because I was doing what our nation needed us to do in places like Kosovo and Iraq and places like that. My new introduction I like the best, and some of you can relate to this. I used to like being called Sarah's husband the best and the father of Susan Lucas, but I got a new introduction I like the best, and that's the grandpa of Jason Walker Lynch. 4 months ago, our son's wife gave birth to our first grandchild, JW. JW is absolutely brilliant, absolutely brilliant. When he sets him arms, I look at him, he listens very well. He doesn't ask any questions. The only problem that we have is he's not taking any notes, but I'll teach him how to do that over time. So I do like to introduce myself as the grandpa of Jason Walker Lynch. Who out there is a grandfather? Raise your hand. I see some folks out there old enough to do it. You can appreciate how cool it is being a grandpa. I like it with old JW because he'll sit there in my lap, and I'll be talking to him, and then he'll scrunch up his little face. I know he's fixing to do something, so I hand him off to my son. I said, "This is your son." He takes care of it. He brings it back all cleaned up, and I continue being a grandpa. It's just a great gig. It really is. Tonight, I've got 3 things I'd like to share with you. It's a message of pride, it's a message of hope, and it's a charge for the future. First, the message of pride. I am proud to be amongst you. I'm proud to be a member of the Maverick family. I'm proud to be here with you this evening. Let me talk first about the student athletes. I'm proud of you, and you should be proud of yourself. Being a college student is hard. I know it's hard. Just going to class, taking tests, passing finals by itself is a Herculean feat. And at our great university, 51% of us are first in the family to go to college. In my particular life, I'm first in the family to graduate from high school. My parents both graduated from the 7th grade and 11th grade, and they thought that was plenty. But I know it's hard being a college student. You know, Jim mentioned I went to West Point and I went to MIT. When I was at MIT, the highest grade I got on any test was a 52. I was always the lowest in the class. Every time I'd take a test, I'd get the results back. I'd say, "I can't believe this," and I'd be moving over to the ROTC department to call the Army and say, "I quit. This place sucks." And I called my wife first, and she'd say, "No, you can't quit. We're going to complete this." And I did indeed complete my graduate studies at MIT because of her urging. So just being a college student, I know it's hard, but you've chosen, you student athletes, you have chosen to not just be a student, but to be a student athlete. And all that entails, the practices, the games, the trips, and indeed doing that while at the same time you're a student. So you got to be very proud of yourself. You have chosen the harder right instead of the easier wrong. You could have said, "No, I'm just going to be a student. I'm going to focus on my studies and I'm going to graduate." You said, "No, by God, I'm going to do that and I'm going to be an athlete." So be very proud. For the parents that are out there, please raise your hand if you're a parent of one of these great student athletes. We got to be so proud of the parents in the audience and your parents back at home. I mean, I like both kinds of music, country and Western. Merle Haggard has taught me a lot over the years. Merle Haggard's got a song entitled "The Roots of Your Raising Run Deep." I got to tell you, for the student athletes to be as successful as they are, amazingly successful, they couldn't have done that without the love and encouragement of their parents. So for you parents that are in the audience, God bless you. And you know as well as I do, the most important thing you do is raise your children, touch your children. That is truly your legacy. So parents, be very proud. And for the coaches and the educators and the administrators, be proud of what you're doing. My favorite book is a book entitled "A Life God Rewards" by Bruce Wilkinson. And the author says, God really doesn't care how many stars you wear, how much money you make. He cares about how many people you touch. I tell people all the time, I believe the 2 most important people in our society are our service members who protect our freedoms and our way of life, and our educators who guarantee our future. And candidly, we as a nation got this backwards. We don't recognize our service members and our educators, but we should. I see somebody trying to applaud out here. Round of applause for our educators, our coaches, our teachers, our trainers. You all are investing in the future. You all are investing your time, your passion, and your energy to make our world a better place by the touching hand you're putting on our student athletes here at this magnificent university. So be very, very proud. Now, a message of hope. My hope for you all. My hope is you find love, that you find passion, and you find commitment. Jim Spaniolo has become a very, very good friend of mine. He gave me a book not long ago entitled Younger Next Year, and it's written for folks over the age of 50 and tells us how we can reverse the aging process. And generally it says, in addition to exercising and don't eat crap and the things that we know we're not supposed to do, it says you got to have a love, you got to have a passion, and you got to have a commitment. My hope for you is you find love. My hope for you is that you find love. The love of my life is my beautiful wife, Sarah, and every day I count my blessings, and she at the top of the list. She's been for me there along every step of the road, and you can imagine in the U.S. military, while we've been at war, that's been a rocky road, and she's been there for me, and I hope that you find the love. I hope that you find a passion. You know, I went to West Point in 1973 only because I couldn't afford to go to college anywhere else. Man, I went to see my guidance counselor as a junior in high school, and I said, Miss Lowell, Eileen Lowell was her name. I said, Miss Lowell, my parents can't afford to send me to college. They both worked at the paper factory in Hamilton, Ohio. I said, my parents can't afford to send me to college. Where can I go if I got no money? And she said, you can go to these things called military academies. And I said, no kidding. I said, what do they cost? She says, they don't cost anything. They pay you to go there. That sounds pretty cool. So I applied to West Point in Annapolis. I got my West Point acceptance on Monday, my Annapolis acceptance the very next day, Tuesday. I went to West Point only because I got that acceptance the day before. And in my case, you know, the postman truly determined my fate. I went home and I told my dad, I said, Dad, I'm going to West Point. He looked at me and said, boy, what are you doing that for? That's the Army. You ain't going to like it. That's the Army. My dad was a private E1 when he was drafted in 1945. He was a private E1 when he was kicked out of the Army in 1947. He was the world's worst soldier, and he's very proud of that fact. He said, boy, you don't want to go to West Point. That's the Army. But I went anyway. And I got there, and after about 3 weeks, they let me call home. Dad answered the phone. I said, Dad, you're right. This place sucks. I'm coming home. Pregnant pause on the other end of the phone. Finally, he said, where are you going to sleep? I had no place to go, so I stayed at the academy. I figured, here's what I'll do is I'll graduate from West Point, and 5 years later, I'll get a job, do something else, get out of the Army. And that 5 years transformed to 35 years. Because in my life, it went from being a job to a profession to a passion. I hope for you, you find a passion in your life. What do you want to do to contribute to this thing called mankind? What do you want to do to truly make a difference? A passion. And then my hope for you is you find a commitment, that you commit yourself to some greater good, something that's bigger than just you, something that we need as a nation, something that we need as a world. I pray for you, I hope for you, commitment. And then a charge for the future. Who here wants to be successful in life? Raise your hand. No, rarely do I see people sitting on their hands when I ask that question, but you got to be honest with yourself. The most important piece of furniture in your house is your mirror. Is your mirror. And every day when you look in that mirror, the reflection back ought to be somebody who's doing the best they can, the absolute best they can every day. I don't care if it's a student looking in the mirror, a coach looking in the mirror, an administrator looking in the mirror. I don't care, but the reflection back ought to be somebody that can acknowledge that you're doing the best you possibly can. The key to success in life is real easy. It is real easy. Do every job superbly and be visible and widely known. Just think about that. Do every job superbly and be visible and widely known. It doesn't matter if you're the head towel folder at the Maverick Activity Center. Be the best towel folder. Be the best you can at that chosen task, and you'll be successful in life. It's really that simple. And be visible and widely known. Make sure people know who you are and what you're doing. Don't find yourself hiding in the dark. Be out there and make sure people know who you are. Have a passion for what you do. And then I ask that you stay engaged with this magnificent university. What I worry about is people leave a great place like this, They don't know how great they got it here. Then they go out into the real world and they forget about where they came from. This place, this magnificent university has touched your lives in ways you'll never know. And you got to remember that. And as you go forward from this place, whether you're graduating in a few weeks or not for a few years, when you leave, don't buy into this idea, don't look back. When you leave, always look back. When you leave, always remember from where you came. When you leave, remember of the change in your life made possible at the University of Texas at Arlington. When you leave, commit to making a difference in the lives of those who follow you. And I'll end this with a quote, because it's appropriate tonight. Does anybody know of a guy named Douglas MacArthur? If you know about Douglas MacArthur, raise your hand. You probably at least saw the movie. I'm in the movie, by the way. Look close. A lot younger version of me is in the opening scenes of that movie. Anyway, Douglas MacArthur is a famous Army general. And candidly, when he retired from active duty, he was one of the only handful of five-star generals in our Army, and we don't do that anymore after World War II. But he said while he was a superintendent at West Point, he said, "On the fields of friendly strife are sown the seeds that on other days and other fields will bear the fruits of victory." So what you're doing day to day on the fields of friendly strife, you're not just playing a game. You're not just playing a game for that day, for that event. You are sowing seeds that for you as an individual and for us as a collective university will bear the fruits of victory. For all of you, God bless you, and thank you for what you do.